Tonight, the Chancellor faces a growth downgrade as business leaders issue a warning ahead of Wednesday's budget. The head of the CPI tells Rachel Reeves not to inflict death by 1,000 taxes. The Sky News learns that the Office for Budget Responsibility will downgrade its growth forecast for the rest of this Parliament. We'll take you deep inside number 11 as our political editor Beth Rigby and our economics editor Ed Conway give us the lowdown on what to expect on Wednesday. Also ahead in the next hour, BBC bosses grilled by MPs over the impartiality row with Donald Trump, as the advisor at the centre of the controversy says the corporation isn't institutionally biased. The Conservative Party chair comes under fire after appearing to compare a piece of Reform UK merchandise with a badge awarded in Nazi Germany. And after Rachel Reeves said that she was tired of people mansplaining the budget to her, the Tory leader tells us that it's actually because she's doing a terrible job. We'll be discussing that and much more with our panel tonight. They are Sir Jake Berry and Caroline Flint, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Monday, I'm Darren McCaffrey, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. A very good evening to you all. We are finally here. After months of speculation, pitch rolling and, frankly, at times chaos, it is budget week. Perhaps the most crucial week this year for the fate of the British economy and, indeed, that of the government. Rachel Reeves really does need to get this right. Not just to find that much-needed economic growth and to finally lift living standards in this country, but also to convince a very sceptical public that she is the best person for the job. If she fails, it may not only prove fatal for her career, but indeed that for the entire government. However, what we all should be concerned about is not those political careers or indeed the future of the government, but we should be looking at whether we're going to be here again in a year's time with another budget that's going to increase taxes yet again and indeed spending cuts, all at the time in which our debt continues to spiral. Because ultimately that will be the takeaway from this year's budget. Let's ensure we're not there again. And all this, as we learned today with only 2 days to go, from Sam Coates, that the UK's fiscal watchdog, the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility, is set to downgrade its growth forecasts for 2026 and every other year that remains of this Parliament. The prospects do not look good. And also today, we heard from the Confederation of British Industry, which warned that the Chancellor should not inflict death by 1 million tax cuts. It's going to be a big week for our politics, a big week for our economy. Our first report tonight is from our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who was at that CBI conference.
Businesses can now be certain that we're never going to have to do a budget like that again.
That, the promise after the budget a year ago, still on business leaders' lips today.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
But 12 months on, the Chancellor can't keep her word. Labour's pre-election pastry offensive feels like a long time ago.
What do you expect to feel on Wednesday with the budget?
Trepidation.
Uncertain.
Concerned.
Uncertain. Stability would be great.
If we reject the doommongers and the naysayers...
48 hours out from the budget, the business secretary sent out to insist they still share an agenda.
The number one mission of this government is and remains economic growth.
But also to beg for understanding.
We are acting. People know that I can't just wave a magic wand and it happened today. But don't give the impression that we're not acting on energy prices, because for businesses that need that help the most, they're getting it.
You say that growth is this government's number one priority. On Wednesday, we're going to see £17 billion more spent on welfare. How is that helping growth?
Well, again, let's see what does happen on Wednesday. I accept that we need more urgency, we need more boldness, because we inherited a growth emergency. We are still in that growth emergency that we inherited.
Similar language from a predecessor, now the Tory leader.
We need something very, very radical to start tackling this perennial growth issue. And that's where the Chancellor needs to focus on in her speech on Wednesday.
She has no time for the Chancellor's complaints.
We heard from Rachel Reeves at the weekend. She was complaining about people mansplaining her about how to be Chancellor. What did you think when you saw that?
I'm not a man, and I think she's doing a terrible job. I don't think she can call that mansplaining. A lot of people out there in the country, men and women, thinks that she needs to cut tax, and if she raises it, then she should go. That's what she should be worried about.
I've been talking to companies large and small at this conference, and they say that the Chancellor should be doing the opposite of what she's planning for Wednesday's budget.
The boss of the CBI says take the tough decisions now.
So do you think the Chancellor should put up income tax?
What we've said to the Chancellor is better to make one big, brave decision rather than 20 decisions which will distort our economy, which don't lead to growth and investment, and don't raise as much money as you need to ensure that the public finances are really stable.
The Chancellor said that those with the broader shoulders should pay the most. So why shouldn't big business pay more?
The overall tax burden on business is at historic highs. There isn't any more room for manoeuvre. And we've got to remember, it's our big and small employers who are creating the jobs, the investment, the higher living standards, the prosperity that people desperately want to see.
Hello, what can I do for you?
The economy needs an adrenaline boost, but the money in this budget is going on shoring up Keir Starmer. The long-term challenges remain.
Sam Coates reporting there, and as you can see, Sam is in the studio with me tonight, alongside our duo. That is the former chairman of the Conservative Party, now a Reform UK member, Sir Jake Berry, and the former Labour Minister, Caroline Flint, who we'll be talking to in a second. Sam, very good evening to you first. And we've got a sense now of this kind of smorgasbord, if you like, of a budget that we're going to get on Wednesday, whether that is mansion tax, a gambling tax, the freezing of those thresholds. It looks like it's going to be piecemeal rather than one kind of radical thing that we saw the CBI president wanting.
And that's exactly what business is worried about. Look, I wouldn't underestimate how difficult Wednesday is going to be. Even though it feels like we all know what's coming, I fear that for the government after Wednesday, it's going to enter a new level. This morning I revealed that the Office of Budget Responsibility will downgrade growth compared to what they said in March. In all of the years after this year of this Parliament, look, I think that's partly a function of the fact that they think that the long-term trend of growth, productivity, is less effective than it was before. If there's one bit of potential good news, though, for business, the other thing I've heard from government sources is they are relatively confident that after Wednesday they'll be able to say that they've got enough wiggle room, enough headroom. They're going to increase the gap between the amount that they're going to spend and the very tight borrowing limits that she set herself, the headroom. And that will mean that we're no longer in that doom loop that Rachel Reeves...
So that was the argument, essentially, she tried to make last year. And that didn't work out very well. In
order to do that, she's got to create a bigger buffer. Maybe, at the moment, it's 9.9 billion, maybe 20 billion or thereabouts. Something in that order would settle the markets, settle businesses' nerves that she's out of this annual cycle of tax rises. But I think that the pain that it will take to get there will be something quite big after Wednesday.
OK, Sam, for the moment, thank you. Caroline, pain, that's what we've got to look forward to on Wednesday.
Well, I mean, it's from last year, if we remember, you know, one of the big decisions in the first budget of the government was on things like the winter fuel payment. What we saw was all the arguments were put in favour of why they should have that. The government's had to do a U-turn on that.
Because of Labour backbenches?
Because of Labour backbenches. So one of the, I think, the things to look out for this week is how many concessions are going to be given to Labour backbenchers this week, whether it's a two-child benefit cap or in other ways as well, to deal with some of their concerns. Obviously, benefits are going to go up. I think it's something like 44% across the board. Alongside appeasing some of the Labour backbenchers will be what can she say in terms of helping people with the cost of living, whether it's in terms of the benefit increases, maybe something on energy as well to reduce the costs there. She'll be looking for that too. But she has created a situation which is quite difficult for her in terms of wriggle room on this. There's been so much speculation ahead of this budget. And I know that happens with every Chancellor.
It seems
but
particularly
I mean, it's been particularly,
yeah.
given that usually is, you know, silence is golden on these things because how it affects everybody's nervousness about the economy. She sort of, you know, she has backed herself into a corner. But importantly, just going to your point, is when are they going to be able to talk about the big issues they came into government about, which is growth and how they are going to create more jobs, how they're going to get people work, how they're going to get the infrastructure. So we'll
doesn't seem to be happening. Jake, I mean, to be fair to Rachel Reeves, you know, you might argue she's not made a good fist of it, but no one would really want to be in her position. I mean,
No,
it's been quite difficult for quite a long time.
She didn't have a golden inheritance. You know, and anyone in the Conservative Party, I heard Rishi Sunak out say, oh, he had a golden inheritance. I don't think that's quite true. I think the economy was in a better position, but it's been very weak for a number of years. What I would say, this budget speculation has been so damaging, but it has been driven out of Downing Street. You had Rachel Reeves having a slightly bizarre but extraordinary press conference, basically saying, you know, I'm not quite going to say it, guys, but I'm going to put income tax up, and then U-turning. All of this huge cash giveaway on benefits, which will, yes, appease and appeal to Labour backbenchers, but is not going to be popular with the public because this is a doomsday budget. We are all going to be paying much, much more. And I appreciate that they're going to say, well, you know, now we don't have to come back for more tax rises. But it's almost a year to the day since Rachel Reeves sat at that CBI conference and said, I've fixed the foundations, I can guarantee I'm not going to be coming back for more. Hello, a year later, that's exactly what's happening.
I mean, we do believe that she's going to try and protect those in the lower income. I mean, it is those at the top end who are going to pay significantly more relative. Sam, I said in my piece at the top that, you know, this is a big week for the British economy, but it's a big week for Rachel Reeves herself. I mean, she cannot afford not to get this right.
Absolutely. But if Rachel Reeves does not survive the week or is fatally whole this week, then so is Keir Starmer's government, quite frankly. The Prime Minister and his Chancellor are so intertwined, and I think Keir Starmer knows that the damage is not just what happens to the person sitting in number 11. Look, there is a problem that's bigger than this budget with this government, and that is what you're talking about, Karen. It is the relationship between ministers and its backbenchers. This government has a landslide majority, yet when MPs, Labour MPs, demand something, this government feels it needs to give in, which is fair enough up to this point. They seem to have found the money in order to appease that. But that is a trend that will keep happening over the next 3 years.
Sustainable.
And is very hard to sustain because at each turn it will mean more tax rises.
OK, Sam, as always, thank you very much indeed. And we'll have more from you on your podcast, of course, tomorrow morning, where I'm sure you'll have more tidbits of information as we await that budget. And we will be talking about it with our panel in just a second. But a reminder that it is almost certainly the speculation around the budget to feature in tomorrow's newspapers. And we've got our extended press preview from 10:30 tonight with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. As you can see, joining us tonight from 10:30 will be Kevin Maguire, the Daily Mirror columnist, and the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Baroness Arlene Foster. Now, Luke Trill is the Executive Director of polling agency More in Common. And a little earlier, we ran through some of the latest research out today on the government's battle for public opinion. Have a look at this. Luke, what's really fascinating about all of this, 2 days ahead of this budget, is how unpopular Rachel Reeves is, almost historically unpopular.
Yes, I think it's fair to say that all of the briefing in advance of the budget has not done much to boost the public's confidence in Rachel Reeves. When we asked people, how much confidence do you have in her to handle the British economy, just 24% said that they had either a fair or a great deal amount, 76% not much, and 39% actually of that none at all. But I think the figure which might worry her even more is even amongst Labour 2024 voters, those people who voted Labour in the last general election, 48% of that group say they have
50,
not
50,
much or none at all.
And how does this compare with previous chancellors, whether it's, you know, Lawson, Ken Clarke, George Osborne?
I think it's fair to say that confidence in Rachel Reeves has fallen quicker than we've seen for other chancellors. In fact, in some other polling today, her approval rating for us hit -52. That's the lowest that we've recorded for her. And it's been on a constant slide, basically since Labour won the general election.
Well, talking about the unpopularity of Rachel Reeves, you guys have done a comparison, if you like, about whether the previous guys would have done any better. Jeremy Hunt and, of course, Rishi Sunak. And the British public, it wasn't that long ago, kicked these guys out of government.
They did. These sorts of figures would have been unimaginable just 18 months ago. But we asked, would you prefer, or who would make a better Chancellor, Rishi Sunak or Rachel Reeves? 68% opting for Rishi Sunak. We asked the same about Jeremy Hunt, the last Conservative Chancellor.
It's not even close.
Similar numbers, 65%. It's not even close. Now, look, sometimes these sorts of poll questions are referendums on the incumbent rather than sort of head-to-heads in terms of how people answer them. But the fact that it's so stark, I think, really does just highlight the difficulty Labour are in.
And that is all because people are pretty gloomy at the moment, it's fair to say, and unsurprisingly pretty gloomy given the fact that we haven't had any economic growth in real terms, or indeed a lifting of living standards. And when you look at that, that comes through from where the public feel about the kind of state of the economy, if you like, and indeed whether their taxes, and for lots of people, they will increase in this budget.
Yeah, I mean, just look at these figures. We asked people thinking about the budget, what do you expect to happen? 71% think that their taxes will rise. 67% think they're going to have to cut back on their spending. 57% saying that their quality of life will get worse. And just 17% thinking that this is a budget which is going to lead to the economy growing. So right across those metrics, it's a lot of gloom. I suppose the only good thing you can say is that perhaps Rachel Reeves can only surprise on the upside on Wednesday, given how low those
As
figures
in, expectations are so bad that, well, you say that. I mean, Labour so far have proven some ways the opposite. This is the one, though, my quality of life will get worse. 57%. I mean, that in many ways is the heart, isn't it, of our politics, not just under this Labour government, is a sense that people's lives for a long time have not been getting better.
Exactly that sense that the social contract is broken, that actually the status quo just isn't working for lots of people. And of course, we chat to people in focus groups as well as doing the polling. And the stories we hear from people are, I'm not living, I'm just surviving, I'm living to work, I'm working to live. That sense the system isn't working is driving people away from those traditional mainstream parties to parties like Reform UK and the Greens, both of whom are in the ascendancy.
And look, we've seen lots of speculation over the last couple of months or so about what taxes will increase, because we do know taxes are going to increase. The Chancellor's been clear about that. And the public have got different views, haven't they, on different taxes. And maybe, unsurprisingly, betting is reasonably popular when it comes to tax rises.
I mean, so-called sin taxes are always quite popular in the public's mind, so you can see clear support there for increasing taxes on online sports betting. This mooted mansion tax, also popular on high-value properties. The milkshake tax, as I think it's been become known, popular as well, as are lots of the other ones. But one of the things that you will notice is all of them have a certain amount of opposition. And when you look at the number of people who object to at least one of them, that is much higher. Some taxes, though, unpopular on their own. One of those is freezing income tax bands, and the other is that idea of doing a bit of a switcheroo, of putting up income tax and cutting national insurance. That is one of the most unpopular we tested.
I have to say, I'm very surprised this tourist tax is so unpopular, given the fact that I know a lot of people travel around the country, but it's pretty standard across lots of Europe. Let's end, though, on what may well happen in regards to income tax, the freezing of thresholds, whether that potentially is breaking that key manifesto pledge.
Well, having seemingly ruled out raising the rate of income tax, which our polling suggested would have been a public opinion disaster for the government, the briefing now seems to suggest that the income tax bands will be frozen. But that's not necessarily good news for the Chancellor. 47% of the public say that would count as a breach of their promise not to put up income tax. Just 28% say it wouldn't breach that manifesto pledge. And again, if you look at Labour 2024 voters, they are split down the middle. 40% saying it breaches the manifesto, just 39% saying it doesn't.
And just very briefly, look, this gets to the heart of this budget, is whether the government does one big thing, which it's not now going to do, of income tax, and annoy everyone, but does so many little taxes, you probably end up annoying as many people through that back door.
And that's the conundrum that they put themselves in through that manifesto pledge not to raise those headline rates of tax. All of our polling, though, suggests that had they breached that manifesto commitment, had they put up the headline rate of income tax, the public would have lost trust at a dramatic level. So I think they boxed themselves in to this smorgasbord budget or whatever it's being called, but I think it's the only choice they had.
OK, Luke, as always, thank you very much indeed. Well, Jack and Caroline are with me and they were watching that. And Caroline, you almost through gritted teeth looking at just how unpopular in many ways Rachel Reeves already is, and that's before the budget.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're saying that Rishi and Jeremy Hunt today were great. I'm not sure, you know, actually when they were in those posts, it was as fulsome as that. Look, it is tough, and I suppose in some ways, when you look at the comparisons with Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak, and this is part of the problem they've left for Rachel Reeves, is they were literally throwing money away when they were doing those roles. In the lead up to the 24 general election, there were loads of government giveaways, which created even more of an imbalance in what we had. So this is tough. There's no doubt about that. And I think it goes with that general feeling people are just saying, well, OK, if you're going to take more money from me, what are you actually going to spend it on? And I think that's another side of it. People have lost faith with what actually the money's spent on to improve their lives.
I was talking to Luke and he's suggesting people don't want to see public spending increase by that much because they feel that it's not really delivering very much. Jake, on this, though, I mean, you know, there's lots of suggestions, and we had this when Liz Truss was in government, that we need to do something. We're tinkering around the edges. We need to do something radical.
Well, look, I think if you look at a lot of the polling, there is appetite out there in the public to cut spending, and that's why with this, £15 billion plus proposed, I mean, we won't know until Wednesday, this proposed increase in the benefits bill, the public do oppose because they sort of just say, look, you know, there's a bit too much month and not enough paycheck. I've never had more money taken away from me. Services in many cases have never been worse. Why am I paying extra for people to be given more in benefits, when in many cases, you know, benefits are going up by 4% in many cases once these tax changes are taken into account, particularly the lag in those income tax brackets. People working every day won't be getting anything like
Jake,
a 4% pay rise.
The reason I suggest also something radical is because maybe this may result in us rejoining the customs union or the single market. And I don't want to bring up Brexit as an argument again, but we also had this week, and this is from the US National Bureau of Economic Research, so I'm not entirely sure anyone's got a skin or a fight in the game or whatever, and they say that Brexit has reduced UK GDP by between 6 to 8% in the last 10 years. Investment is down between 12 to 18%, and it's reduced both employment and productivity between 3 to 4%. i.e., Brexit, whatever you think of it, has been economically really bad for Britain.
Well, look, next year will be the 10-year anniversary of the biggest democratic vote we ever had in our country. One that
people now regret.
Well, look,
lots.
We'll see. But the thing I would say is, I haven't seen the study you refer to, but causation and correlation are not the same thing. Actually, the thing that casts a longer shadow, if you look at the academic reports on this, the thing that casts a longer shadow over the UK economy is that incomes and growth haven't recovered from the 2008 bust. That was a global crisis before Caroline jumps in and says it was a global crisis. I accept it was. But we've had the 2008 bust. We've had COVID, which is a huge impact on the British economy. Yes, we've had Brexit, not necessarily in this order. And then, you know, there's no
I'm just trying to say it's been damaging.
This is
That's
what
all I'm saying. Economically,
there's no point politicians sort of constantly looking around and saying, look, well, it's this person's fault. That's not what the British people want. They want solutions. They want a government who comes in and says, look, these are the cards that we have been dealt. We will try and pay them well. The challenge is that Rachel Reeves has come in and she's played her cards catastrophically badly.
Just very briefly, Caroline, because we've run out of time, but, I mean, is Rachel Reeves genuinely the person who can do this? Because today, I mean, the evidence really isn't there, is it?
Well, look, she's going to have to sort of tough this out. I mean, clearly, she can't ignore what people are feeling about the state of the country, their aspirations, their hopes, and they're not feeling happy about Rachel Reeves. She's got to change that view. And what she says this Wednesday will be very important to that, but also it'll be the actions after that to reassure people. And that's for Rachel and Keir Starmer and the government to prove. OK, for the moment, guys, thank you very much indeed, because we are going to take a quick break here on the Politics Hub. Up next, we're going to go inside that famous black door, number 11, and find the very room where the big budget decisions are made. That's with Ed and Beth after the break.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Now, if you've seen the musical Hamilton, you'll know all about being in the room where it happens. Well, that's exactly where our political editor, Beth Rigby, and our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, have found themselves this week at number 11. Deep within its halls is a room where the biggest budget decisions are being made. Beth and Ed sent us their take on what's going on behind those closed doors.
I bet you come here all the time.
Don't you come here more often than me?
Number 11 sometimes, but not where we're going.
Well, today we're going to go and sit in the room where it happens. We're in number 11.
It's number 11. It's the real number 11.
Here we are. We're in the room. We're in the room where it happens. We're in the room where the budget decisions happen. I mean, I can't believe they've let us in here.
Do you want to play Chancellor?
Well, I think if I sit here through osmosis, will I get into her head and work out what's in the budget? You've got quite difficult decisions to make, rather her than me. We talk a lot about this book, the Red Book.
Yeah.
And the reason we do is in that book is the scorecard. And that kind of explains everything to us. But just explain that.
All the scorecard is this, it's a table. It's kind of a spreadsheet. When they're working it out, when they're working on it in this room, which they're doing, they've got a spreadsheet up. Sometimes it's on laptops, sometimes they'll put it on the screen there. And in that spreadsheet is everything, like here's what's going to happen to income tax, here's what's going to happen to national insurance, here's what's going to happen to all of the different measures. And that is why, on budget day itself, in the afternoon, when we get this document...
That's all we want, isn't it?
It's what we flick to straight away, and it's like, right, what are the numbers? What's the biggest measure?
Because what it tells us is it will tell us where was the biggest tax raising measure, where was the most spending, where did she put the money. OK, Ed Conway.
All right, yeah.
I'm going to give you 60 seconds in which you are going to unpack the big picture of the economy, this budget, and what it means for the Chancellor.
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
OK, so there's two big things that have happened that have changed things and means that, the Chancellor is under much more pressure here, potentially has to raise taxes, do all of that. First of all, they had all these U-turns, all of those stories that we were reporting about kind of welfare, they weren't able to get all their reforms through, winter fuel allowance, all these things. They were supposed to save money, instead they're carrying on spending money on that. So they have to find extra money to pay for that. Secondly, just more broadly, the state of the economy isn't quite where a lot of people thought it would have been by now. So debt interest is a lot higher, having to spend more on debt interest because interest rates are higher. And then also, the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, basically thinks the economy isn't doing as well as it previously thought. And you put all of that together, and there's a big black hole against the public finance, against the kind of fiscal rules that the Chancellor has set herself. And that's why she potentially has to raise taxes. How am I doing?
You've got 8 seconds.
Oh, OK. We could just
absolutely
have a chat in that intervening period. I guess my question is just, how can they politically get away with it? Because it is going to be tricky, isn't it, given a lot of this stuff, in the manifesto, they weren't hinting about a lot of the difficult decisions they're going to have to make this time around. So, in 1 minute, Beth Rigby, can they actually pull this off politically?
OK, so how are the government going to frame this budget? Watch out for 3 things. They're going to talk about cutting waiting lists. They're going to talk about cutting national debt. They're going to talk about cutting the cost of living. That's how they're going to frame it and try and sell it to the public. What does that mean? It means no more austerity. It means no more borrowing. It means keeping inflation down to try and keep prices down in the supermarkets and so on. But that also means that they're going to have to raise taxes, and that is going to hurt. Now, it looks like they are not going to break manifesto commitments explicitly, but people, I'm telling you, your taxes will be going up. They were going to raise income tax. They're now not going to do that. But that's a big chunk of tax raising, isn't it? Billions of pounds. She's got to find it in other ways. So there's risk there, because when you do lots of different measures, there can often be a backlash. Think what happened with the farmers' tax. Think about winter fuel allowance had to be reversed. So there's a lot of politics in that. Will she offer other things in terms of more generous benefits around some areas of welfare in order to bring the party on board. Political capital for this government is draining fast, so it's going to be a moment of high tension for the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. Have I gone over?
Yeah, you've gone over.
I've
I mean,
absolutely
I was just
busted it.
politely not
But
saying
I was
anything.
enjoying that. I looked at the choices I've had to make, and I've decided it's a very difficult job.
Are you resigning?
I'm resigning as Chancellor.
Resigning as Chancellor.
I'll stay on as political editor.
Ed and Beth there, inside number 11. And of course, they will be fronting our budget coverage here on Sky News on Wednesday. Do not miss that. Right, we're going to take another quick break here on the Politics Hub. Up next, though, we're going to be turning our attention to the BBC, where the heads of the corporation have been questioned by MPs about that Donald Trump speech edit. We'll hear what they had to say in their defence after the break. Very welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, senior BBC figures have appeared before MPs about the handling of that now infamous edit of Donald Trump's January 6th speech. They included the chairman, Starmer Shah, and Sir Robbie Gibb, the man accused of having political influence at the top of the corporation. But up first was the BBC's former external independent editorial advisor, that's Michael Prescott, whose memo was leaked and led to this story ultimately coming out. He accused the corporation's old boss of having a blind spot on editorial failings and said he did not think, though, that the BBC was institutionally biased.
I do not think it's institutionally biased. Let's be very clear. Tons of stuff the BBC does is world-class, both factual programming and non-factual programming. I was a political correspondent at the Daily Mirror, Sunday Times, other places for 14 years. I think the standard of BBC Westminster is exemplary. And that's why I keep saying these were incipient problems. We were finding the odd problem here, the odd problem there. And the crucial thing was, when I say odd problem here and there, every single thing we spotted, as per my memo, seemed to me to have systemic causes. And the root of my disagreement and slight concern even today is that the BBC was not, and I hope they will change, but will they, treating these as having systemic causes. There's real work that needs to be done at the BBC.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is with me and was watching that select committee all afternoon. John, we heard there a bit of criticism of Tim Davie on the whole. What did other MPs manage to niggle out of the other people on that committee?
First of all, on Mr Prescott, I mean, I'm sure we all remember Mike Prescott. He was political editor of the Sunday Times, a political journalist for years. I must admit, I don't recall him working on the Mirror, but never mind. But he now is the very model of a modern corporate professional.
Are you suggesting journalists are not that, John?
No, hold on.
You've always been that to me.
I'm saying that because it was a very assured performance of he's the managing director of Hanover Communications. He's had other corporate jobs as well. I wouldn't say quite ran rings around the MPs, but I thought their questioning was pretty poor, actually, most of them. Then it came to, it was the chairman of the BBC, Samir Shah, and the pantomime villain of all this, Sir Robbie Gibb. Now, the main thing we learned from Samir Shah was that he did not want Tim Davie, the Director General, to resign. He seemed to be quite happy that Deborah Turness, the news boss, quit. He announced new plans for a Deputy Director General to try and shake up the top structure of the BBC. But this was Mr Shah talking about his regret that Tim Davie quit.
Okay.
I do not think the Director General should have resigned. I think that the act by the Director of News was an honourable and proper act. I think she took responsibility, for which I will again say I applaud her for doing so. I do not think that that meant that the Director General had also had to resign. However, when you read the Director General's reason for resigning, certainly this was one factor, but he also says there were many other factors that led to that. I wish, and can I say the board wishes, that the Director General had not resigned. He had our full confidence throughout.
Well, for politicians, I think the most interest was in the performance of Sir Robbie Gibb. Now, this is someone who I remember going right back to Francis Maude, Michael Portillo, Tory spin doctor in those days. Allies of William Hague claimed he was a Portalista plotting against William Hague. His performance today at that committee, I think some critics would probably say he's perhaps guilty of trying to rewrite his CV, because it was all about, I was only worked in government for a couple of years. I worked at the BBC for 25 years. Don't compare me with Alistair Campbell. He kept on talking about how he was impartial and. Let's have a little listen to one of the exchanges with one of the MPs about whether he was impartial or not.
There couldn't be a bigger mismatch between the way I'm presented in some quarters in relation to my attitude. I think I'd become weaponised in terms of how I'm perceived. Everyone that know me, I'm hugely impartial. I have friends across the political divide. I have impartiality through my bones.
Through my bones. So there we have it. So Robbie Gibb, no, I'm not a political figure at all. I mean, he was described, I think it was Boris Johnson who put him on the board of the BBC. Boris is man on the BBC board, he was claimed to be at the time. And, of course, there have been claims that he has used his his influence as a Conservative politician to shape things, appointments and so on. He, of course, completely denies that and, as you heard, stressed his impartiality. But there are those in other political parties, the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party, who think he shouldn't be on that board at all. He has come in for criticism. But he got quite a bit of probably the toughest questioning from the MPs, especially the Lib Dems and the Labour MPs on the committee, and not entirely convincing about his impartiality, given his background, that is.
That may be the case. I wasn't entirely convinced, as you rightly pointed out, by some of the questioning, which, on the whole, I thought was pretty poor as well. John,
with a few exceptions.
With a few exceptions. Jake, we can talk about these characters all the time. Most people won't know them at home. The one thing, to be fair, they all agreed on today is that they did not think the BBC was institutionally biased.
Well, I think they're wrong. And, if you look at what Tim Davie was brought in to sort out, let's not forget he was brought in the wake of the Savile scandal. He then oversaw the Hugh Edwards scandal. It was then the Gaza documentary, which was a huge scandal with the son of a Hamas minister presenting a documentary or starring a documentary on the BBC. You've seen the shambles over Bob Villan, I think he's called, at Glastonbury, chanting death, death to the IDF. I mean, I think the BBC, and then finishing with, of course, the worst thing of all, which is this Trump documentary where they doctored a speech. I think the problem with the BBC is that they are biased, but they can't see it because they all work in a building where everyone lives in the same postcode, everyone reads the same newspapers.
Well, that's not... Come on.
You don't get biased when everyone agrees with you.
By the way, that is not true. I mean, the BBC have got offices all around the country.
Well, they don't spend enough time listening to them.
Well, but the BBC is a massive organisation. It's wrong to say that everyone works and lives in the same postcode. I mean, that you would not say that of the people who work in Cardiff or in Aberdeen or in Glasgow and Newcastle.
In all fairness, you're right to pick me up on that. I think the difference is, I'm talking about the leadership, the senior management, the people who make those very high-level editorial decisions.
Caroline? Which postcode is it, by the way, Jake?
Oh, I don't know. Islington.
I mean, I think one of the things about this is just not so much institutional bias, but how slow the BBC is to deal with issues. And I think lots of news outlets and agencies probably make mistakes and things from time to time. The problem with the BBC is it's held to a higher level for all sorts of good reasons. And I think what Michael Prescott, in his evidence, made the point of, he is not an anti-BBC person, but he had raised some issues, moving away from the Donald Trump thing, but some things where things were factually inaccurate. And what he felt frustrated at, and he sort of reflected on this with the committee, is that having gone through the proper channels in the BBC to get them to look at this, they weren't getting anywhere. Yeah. So he basically felt, right, that's it. I'm going to share this with Ofcom and DCMS, and then that led to the leak, obviously, the email. It's the slowness of the BBC to respond, and it's not always on party political issues. There's on a whole host of issues in which is brought into question how they deal with matters.
It does almost feel a sense that essence of accountability is also sometimes the thing that trips it up because it hasn't got process to get things out. OK, John, as always, thank you very much indeed. John Craig there. Now, let's move on because the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, has been speaking for the first time since Nathan Gill, the former leader of the party in Wales, was jailed. You may remember last week the 52-year-old was sentenced to 10.5 years in prison after he admitted accepting tens of thousands of pounds in cash to make pro-Russian statements to the media and the European Parliament. The judge said that Gill had abused a position of significant authority and trust and was motivated by financial and political gain. Well, here is what Nigel Farage had to say a little earlier.
I'm not a police force. I haven't got the resources. Should there be, given that we learn that, well, I won't name him, but the Labour MP has taken 500...
I'd really prefer if you concentrate on reform, actually. Will you instigate an investigation in your party to see if there is any other pro-Russian influence?
We are not a police force. Should there be...
You are the leader of the party, though.
Yes, and if you listen, I'll tell you what I think. I think given, we've seen the Nathan Gill case, given since then we've learnt that a Labour MP took £500,000 for his office costs and campaigning costs from a now known Chinese agent. Is there a problem through British politics? There is. Is it extensive? I doubt it, but I don't know. Should we ask somebody with actual authority to investigate it? Yes.
So would you support calls then for a UK-wide investigation?
I think that's right, and I think there are doubts on all sides right at the moment. So, yes, that would be a good thing to do.
Well, all this comes as questions have also been asked today of the Tory party chairman, Kevin Hollingwake, after he appeared to compare Reform UK to the Nazi Party. Here, if you missed it, is what happened. First, the Reform leader Nigel Farage posted this, a gold version of the party's logo featuring the words family, community and country, with the caption coming soon. In response, Kevin Hollingray compared the logo to the Golden Party badge given out by the Nazi Party, and although he did delete that tweet, he then did repost the comparison with a link to the Golden Party badge Wikipedia page. And here are the two logos side by side. Nigel Farage has demanded answers, while Zahir Youssef, Reform's policy chief, said he's destroyed any chance of Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick keeping the seats. Well, Jake and Caroline are with me. Of course, Jake, you used to be in the Conservative Party. You're now essentially part of Reform. What do you make of all of this?
Well, I think it's a desperate smear, isn't it? And, actually, Kevin as an individual, he's a nice guy. But I think it really is scraping the barrel. And I think, the challenge that the old mainstream parties, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, need to go out there and challenge Reform if they feel they are up for the fight on their policy position. Because if you look at all the opinion polls, more people are supporting Reform than those two combined in some polls. This sort of desperate smear trying to say that people who vote Reform, support Reform, people who are active in Reform are Nazis is appalling. And I would have thought, frankly, the chairman of the Conservative Party, whoever he or she may be from time to time, should be well above this sort of smear politics.
I mean, you know Kevin, you've worked alongside him for years. Do you know what's motivated him to do this?
Well, I don't. I guess it's some sort of desperation. You see this from... I think where we are now politically in the UK, there are basically, in my view, two political parties. There is Reform, and there's everyone who opposes Reform. You had another desperate smear from...
Well, let me finish. Away with that.
You had another
30% in the polls. I mean,
you had another desperate smear from the Labour Party who said that because Nigel Farage asked legitimate questions about the online safety bill, he was in some way a Jimmy Savile sympathiser. That was a Labour minister who said that this is the politics of the gutter. Get out there, have a debate on the issues, talk about the things people are talking about in the local pub or at the school gate, talk about policies. Do not try and smear political parties because you also smear every single one of their supporters.
There's literally too much of this flying around all over the place. I mean, Kevin Hollingray, who's, Yorkshire MP, I thought he had more common sense than this. Interestingly, if you look at the timeline from when I think Reform put up the new badge, and to be honest, I had no idea about what the Nazi badge looked like, to be honest. So I don't know what Kevin knew about that. But if you look at the timeline, it was about 5 o'clock, and then at 9 o'clock later that day, on a Sunday as well, suddenly this tweet comes up from Kevin. That sounds to me like, to be honest, potentially I would suggest someone from Conservative Central Office thinking this was a good idea. Because I can't believe Kevin was spending his Sunday looking up, Nazi memorabilia to compare it to that badge. Whatever you look at it, it's just, again, this whole thing in politics. The public are bored of this. They're bored of, not just Kevin doing this sort of thing when Labour does it, but when Reform do it. They're sick of all this stuff that goes on. What they want to hear about are issues that affect their lives.
I think to some extent, Reform doesn't do it. That's the thing.
Well,
is that, that's why I go back to this sort of
look at Lee Anderson and others. They've said some pretty rough stuff against people in the Labour Party.
They can't win on policy.
There is a Reform MP who's been accused of racism.
Yeah, but I don't... Well, who? I don't say yes. I don't actually know.
As in the I can't remember her name off the top, the female Reform MP who made a comment about advertising of racism.
Yeah, I mean, look, she very much denies that, and Nigel Farage has been absolutely clear that he doesn't think those comments
no, but
are acceptable.
I'm just saying...
And actually, don't they compare...
Doesn't everyone need to change?
Well, yeah. I think that the public are absolutely fed up with this, and why Reform are doing well in the opinion polls, I appreciate it's only a lead, but it's a significant lead and it is sustained, is they are trying to break away from this stupid, frankly, yaboo politics that this represents.
No, we'll see.
OK, we will see indeed. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. We're going to take one last break here on the Politics Hub. Up next, I'm explaining the mansplaining controversy being sparked by the Chancellor, and it's provoked a reaction today from Kemi Badenoch. We'll be talking about that after the break. Stay tuned.
Coming up on the UK Tonight at 8, senior figures from the BBC are grilled by MPs over the impartiality row with Donald Trump. We'll have the latest for you. Also ahead, we'll be hearing from a survivor of a huge snowstorm in Patagonia, which claimed the lives of 5 people, including a 40-year-old British woman. And David Cameron joins calls for targeted screening for prostate cancer after revealing that he has been successfully treated for the disease. All that and much more on the UK Tonight from 8.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay. Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
You can't rule out further tax rises. It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
This knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
Welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, forgive me for being a man while explaining this next story, but there has been a pretty colourful discussion in Westminster about mansplaining. It was sparked when Rachel Reeves told the Times that she was sick of people mansplaining how to be Chancellor. Well, as we heard earlier, our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates asked the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch what she thought about this, and here's what she had to say.
I'm not a man, and I think she's doing a terrible job. I don't think she can call that mansplaining. A lot of people out there in the country, men and women, thinks that she needs to cut tax, and if she raises it, then she should go. That's what she should be worried about.
Caroline and Jake are with us. Caroline, mansplaining?
Well, there is some element of that goes on in politics for women politicians. It wouldn't, there's been quite a few occasions where you've been in a room and you've said something and as a woman, and then, a bloke said pretty much the same thing as you said, and, it gets more acclamation.
I think when you quit as Europe Minister, I've read that you described Gordon Brown of using
window dressing.
Female ministers as window dressing.
Yeah, because basically it was making the point that there were women who were attending cabinet who didn't have the full power of a cabinet member, but it made the optics of having women there look quite good, and that's sort of window dressing, isn't it? But I think what Rachel has to do is prove those people mansplaining wrong. Prove them wrong. Prove that she has got a vision for how we can get our country back on its feet. And that's the way you dissuade the critics. By the way, I don't know which people she's talking about. I hope it's not the male members of the Cabinet who are mansplaining everything to every Tuesday morning when they meet. But, it's clearly got under her skin.
There's definitely a few divisions within that Cabinet. There's little doubt about that. Jake, what's your sense? Has she got a point, in essence? Caroline and others would say being a woman in politics is a more difficult job.
I can't walk a mile in Caroline or Rachel Reeves' shoes at that moment. And if Caroline says it's an issue in British politics, you know, I absolutely, you know, reinforce what she said. I think Rachel Reeves' problem is a bit more fundamental, though. I don't think anyone... We were looking earlier at that poll and she got record low poll ratings. I actually don't think that's to do with her being a woman or otherwise. I think it's to do with the fact that there's just that general feeling out there. She's out of her depth. She came into government without a plan. She stretched reality to the point of emaciation when she was trying to beef up her own CV. I think people just think she's not up to it. Okay. And all sort of evidence so far would reinforce that view.
It is something that she has emphasised, that she's the first female Chancellor, which is an incredible achievement.
Great achievement.
But at the same time, is it also fair, Caroline, that people are going, well, that's great, but we do want you to kind of be a good Chancellor, not just a female Chancellor?
Look, it's great when, you know, people, whether it's women or people of colour, black people, who break the barrier in terms of things. And that, to be fair, you know, Rishi Sunak is the first...
We should celebrate it.
Asian origin Prime Minister. That's something to celebrate. But at the end of the day, what the public are interested in is what are you going to deliver? How are you going to make my life better? How are you going to make me feel more secure? And at the end, and when dealing with that, that's what you've got to focus on. And for all her critics, and some of it I think is unfair. I think some of the language used around her about, you know, her background, her career is. I can know of many men who are pretty mediocre who would not face the same.
Caroline, Jake, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight on the Politics Hub. And that is it for 2 tonight. We're back tomorrow, of course, at 7. Up next, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah Jamie. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow.